Welcome everyone to Patton's Feature Match webinar series. You have joined a session called Feature Match Closer Look, Features of Assistive Technology Writing Tools. My name is Tammy Thompson-Cook and I am an educational consultant at Patton and the statewide team lead for the Assistive Technology Initiative. We are pleased to have Kelly Fonner as our guide through various topics in matching the features of technology to the needs, abilities, and preferences of students. Before I begin, I would like to remind you that attendees are in listen-only mode and the session is being recorded. Handouts for this session are available on the Patton website and I will put them in the chat box as soon as I am done talking. Please use the Q&A feature to ask content-relevant questions, which will be monitored throughout the session and answered by Kelly as time allows. At the end of the live synchronous session, please listen carefully for the code needed for continuing education verification. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and get us started.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Kelly Fonner and I do training in educational and assistive technologies. I'm going to start up my screen here. My background is as a special education teacher that worked in early childhood, classrooms, elementary resource as a teacher, skipped over middle school as a full-time teacher, and then high school resource. And then I also worked for the statewide project there in Pennsylvania for a number of years before I moved to Wisconsin to work on other educational goals and work at the university on some grants. And for the last 15 years or so, I've been doing an independent consultation business that does training for organizations. I have some students that I'm a part of their team and do some work for companies. So I need to, in disclosure here, as we talk about things in writing tools, because I do contract work with several different companies in area of writing, is that I am a contract trainer, but I'm not being paid by any of those companies to bring materials to you today. This is contracted from Pertain Network. So with that, we are going to talk about our topic here, which is feature match. And if you were with us for the previous feature match sessions, you're going to see a common theme, because I do try in my assistive technologies trainings to show people that just because we might have changed the functionality of the tool, for whatever purpose it's for, whether it's communication, expressive communication, whether it's writing, whether it's for mounting systems, whether it's for screen enlargement systems, that the process is the same. That we look at features, and here in the idea of writing, we're going to look at assistive technology writing system. The features are broken down very much in the same way. I also know that we have people that are joining us today that haven't attended the previous ones. So we'll find a happy medium of delivery of the content and some examples. I always like to thank my colleagues who work with me on these various feature match forms and information. And so let's jump into it. When we look at who often comes to assistive technology through the writing lens or the writing needs, we have kids that they're, students and adults of all ages that are looking for an alternative to handwriting. And we have some people that it's more of a support, that they might be able to handwrite, they might be able to print, may or may not be able to do cursive. But when things get more lengthy or more cognition is involved in the content of what they're writing, they struggle more with the print to write process. And of course, as more and more people use keyboards as a part of their writing, we're looking at individuals that can use things that are built in and those that need alternatives to what's built into, whether you're using a tablet, an iPad, if you're using a Chromebook, if you're using a computer, an Apple or a Windows-based computer. There are students that can use things, I like to say, the way they come out of the box. And then there are settings that we put within the system that they're using, or it's things that we add on to what it is that is going on. So just for some examples on the screen here, goes everywhere from alternative grasp support, audio supported writing using a keyboard with feedback, having an alternative such as an alternative alphabet presented through eye gaze. And then we'll also talk about some of the rate enhancement systems. We do have a full hour on word prediction systems as a part of this feature match series. We look at categorizing different writing tools, and because writing is so linked to using technology, it also, you'll see the crossover with writing tools and computer / laptop / tablet access. So we have these low tech alternatives, with the different kinds of grasps and supports and displays of different kinds, or reuse of tools that are out in everyday technologies like label writers. And I have some images as we move further on in the presentation. We have things that are high-tech alternatives. Some things are direct swap outs, where I might replace a standard keyboard with a miniaturized one, with one that's a large keyboard, or replace it with something that's more ergonomically designed either for both hands or a single hand based upon the needs of that particular student. So we have keyboards, and these terms are like, what is a corded keyboard? We're going to be showing you some pictures of things, and so that you can see some images of this. The other thing too, for those of you that have kids with high-tech augmentative and alternative communication systems, and I'm going to give you an example of that here, they often have a keyboard built into their AAC system. So if you've taken the time to work together to evaluate a child for an AAC system, use what you've already done and use the alphabet in that system. You might have to do some alterations with it, as I've had to do with some of my students, but we're using what is built in so that it's not all kinds of different products. I mean, often our most complex students have a variety of assistive technology tools that come together for their functions in school. But if something is built in, and if it's not too much of an impact upon their access system, repetitive stress, those types of things, you may want to consider using what you already got. As Caroline Musselwhite says, dance with the partner that you're with, and who's there. Somewhere in there is Caroline's phrase. Somebody can put that in the chat, what she says. Dance with the girl that you brought, or something like that. Anyway, I digress, which happens often. The other kinds of writing supports that either may or may not be considered assistive technology, but as some kids are being served in virtual supports, we have to keep our eyes on these other types of things that help our writers. Things that are desktop helpers, using alternative papers, using word banks, whether they are electronic or non-electronic, word clouds, word walls, and the purposes behind those. This is kind of the cognitive side of the writing process of graphic organizers, using replacement strategies such as, or speech to text, using voice recognition as a high-tech strategy, but also who needs to listen to what their output is as a part of their writing process. So we'll look at these different types of writing tools. And as we've mentioned in previous sessions, this idea of feature match is not the AT assessment alone. It is a portion of a bigger process, from being introduced to the student that you're going to be working with, finding out what kinds of tools they've already used is quite critical in the area of writing, because I want to know what's been introduced to them before, why it's been abandoned, why, that we might be rethinking about some strategies that didn't get used or aren't continuously used. Why are we revisiting this process is a part of gathering background information. Where do they need to write? And in this area of writing, I will tell you that one of the things as you're finding out, if for those of you that use the SET framework, the student environment, tasks, and tools, is that you will also find out how some of our students have been overly accommodated for. So I've had teachers and parents say to me, well, he doesn't write. Well, just because they don't print doesn't mean that all the writing tasks get removed from their curriculum. I mean, writing is one of our critical ways that we demonstrate knowledge. And if I don't introduce writing, if I take away all of the opportunities to write, I remove one of the ways that kids universally demonstrate what it is that they know. And we're in school, that's one of our things that we have to know. I know what you have to know. And so what can we do to support their writing in that process? So knowing all of that information as you come to features of tools will help you have a more pointed decision. Somebody's asking me to clarify what desktop helpers are. There's a slide. All right, so hang in there for about 10 more slides. I can't tell you that's exactly 10 slides, but it is coming up. So as we pull apart feature matching, we have those needs and abilities of the consumer, of your student. And we look at technology in these 4 areas. The area of input, where that's my human connection, that human to technology connection. Do I touch it? Do I use my eyes on an eye gaze keyboard? Am I using a switch from a switch activated keyboard? What's my input? Do I need to have things magnified so that I can see them? Do I need to have auditory feedback as a part of my input loop so I know what letters that I'm choosing? Processing wise, that's the cognitive interaction. What kinds of cognitive support, such as layouts and word prediction, word banks, other rate enhancement systems? What do you get as a result? So as a result of looking for a writing system, I mean, the assumption is that you want written output, but is that electronic written output? Is it written output that I have students that need to put together presentations versus things that they're writing on a test versus writing essays, fill in the blank? What's the output that you're looking for your students? If you're saying check all of those boxes, those are things that you need to make sure that you consider in features, because you may be looking at more than one tool to support that student across the features that they need. And then other features, those human factors and other areas. So it breaks down into kind of what I've been verbally walking us through is the writer herself or himself, what their abilities are, what their needs are, sensory processing, sensory acuity, physical support, and then the expectations of the environment. And that takes care of your first 3 columns of the SET framework, about the student, about the environment, that's the expectations and the kinds of tasks that they have to do. And then we look at the technology and broke down into those areas of input, processing, output, and human factors. You have a set of forms that lays through of how those forms are laid out. I've mentioned in the past that this is a framework that I learned really early on in my assistive technology years, and it does still serve me here 30 years later, in that I can be introduced to new keyboards, introduced to new alternative keyboards, and put them into this framework of what is that input method? How does my student interact with that technology? What might that feature get called? This 3rd column in input is all driven by the marketing teams of companies. And so all the terminology that they come up with is often trying to distinguish themselves from one company to another. So what one company might call an on-screen keyboard, another company calls it a virtual keyboard, another company calls it an alternate keyboard. So that's part of being and learning about assistive technology is where do those terms fit? But having a framework will help you. Here at the bottom of input are all the things that are about switch access. What type of switch are we using? How does that switch get activated? What does the scanning display look like? All of that is the component of what they need to type, what they need to write. Processing, as I mentioned, is that cognitive piece, and we break it down into cognitive supports for grammar, spelling, cognitive supports in the menu system that they might be using of the tool. How do they move through the menus? Are the menus picturized? Are the menus, do they have auditory feedback? Where are they placed on the screen so that they're more easily accessible? Language support, often in assistive technology, is more associated with the area of augmentative and alternative communication. But in writing, because writing is a means of expressive communication, it's not just about, when we think about writing, it's not just about replacing the keystroke. It's also supporting the cognitive and mental and language components of writing. So many of these same organizational strategies of how do we support kids as they move through their augmentative communication system, if they are also needing to be assistive technology supported writers, you might want to look at some of those same strategies. And then, as I've mentioned, rate enhancement techniques, whether we're using word prediction, pop-ups, frequency or averaging around where somebody might be on a keyboard if they're not actually able to point directly to one key. There are some of the on-screen keyboards that will average where you've been within a cell of it all. And then you have these same layouts for output features broken into auditory, visual, tactual, and interfacing capabilities. And then that big category of other, portability, the company policies, and things like ease of use, transparency, memory, and storage. Can I send my messages to chat? Can I send my messages into email that I'm writing? Can I send my messages into Word docs or whatever I might be using as my writing platform? All things to be thinking about in Feature Match. I have included in this group, because Scott Murphelius and I have a couple specialized Feature Match charts. So you'll see here the one for note-taking. So thinking about how kids organize information for notes. We know that note-taking is on the most complex level in area of writing and serving kids as they're doing their writing. They have to bring together their process of writing with listening to information, bringing in visual information. If they're doing science experiments, we've got tactual interactions with materials. And so all of that has to be thought about. How's it going to organize? How's it best captured? And looking at note-taking systems that capture things through audio conversion to text. There's a growing number of note-taking systems that mostly we're seeing at the community college and university level. And much of that development is coming out of the United Kingdom for supports for their university students who have dyslexia. And we're taking great advantage of that here in the US for what those developments are. So when you look into those companies, you'll often see that they are UK based. All right, I'm going to just do a little quick check-in to see if we have any questions. I will get you that, you will get an image of the helpers. Tammy, I'm not seeing anything on your end?
No, nothing on my end at all.
All right.
Great job.
So some examples. So here's some of those images that go along with the different categories. So whether we're looking at those low-tech alternatives, so It may be that you're using a pen or a pencil, but you're looking for an alternative grasp. And so for the occupational therapists that are online with us today, you know, this is a familiar territory for them. So those things that make decisions between whether I'm working on a standard grasp or an alternative. And for those of us that are not occupational therapists, we should know enough to start saying this kid might need an alternative and then call out for that. But one of the things that often happens with kids when the area of writing turns from learning to print in their early elementary grades to printing to demonstrate knowledge is an over referral to occupational therapists, and they're probably laughing out there, and also to assistive technology people to look at kids because of poor handwriting. And it may not necessarily just be that they need to work on handwriting and other grasping patterns and, you know, 10,000 pencil grips, but it might be the impact of cognition and thinking about writing, the memory issues, the patterns of what you write and how you write, the language issues with writing that are impacting the legibility of their printing. So we get to this grade 3, grade 4, and there's a big push then for looking at writing. A term that's growing in assistive technology is alternative pencils. And although alternative pencils have been around for a really long time, there are presenters that have been focused on alternative pencils, especially for students with multiple challenges. So looking at getting pencils delivered through strategies such as partner-assisted scanning. We'll give you some examples of those if I can turn on my camera. So from some of my students where we might have a grouped alphabet. In fact, let me see if I can share from here. And I'll show you a couple of these. You know, when sharing doesn't go well, I'm going to go back to this mode so that at least it's a little bit bigger, possibly on the document camera screen, and I'm not going to play Zoom Lady right now. So, you know, in some of these alphabets, they're grouped. We look at the strategies for why we group things out together. It might be, in this case, the layout processing-wise is alphabetical. Things are grouped so a student can either point to the group or fist to the group, or can eye gaze to the group. So if they're pointing to this group, then I have a page of those letters enlarged, and then they have a larger surface. So in alternative pencil mode, your access can either be physical, it can be visual, it can also be an auditorily processed alphabet. I'll get it up a little bit bigger. These are my dollar store boards. Love these write on wipe off boards for alternative pencil placement. So I may be, depending upon the needs of the child, A, B, C, D, going at a pace where they can interrupt me with a yes or a reach out, or I have a boy that goes, ah. And when we get to the one that he wants you to then write. So if I've got the D and my student is indicates that's the one he wants, then I write the letter D. You'll also see it, if it's not, we turn to the next page. Not everybody needs the letters named for them. We sometimes with kids will use, instead of our finger, I might use, and this gets a little bit funky with the document camera, I might use a light to light up as I partner assist scan. I might just simply introduce the group E through H and wait for, I try to go to the, that's the one I want, rather than yes, no, because yes, no's got a lot of load on it. I through N, O through T. And you'll see if I just keep going here in this particular set of alternative pencils, you'll also see lowercase, and you will see punctuation and other kinds of indicators of keep going on. So depending upon what you're using. You may also find some low-tech boards that have an alphabet built within them. This is an example from the Texas Region 4's core board. And so now I've got the alphabet built within my AAC system. So just a really quick glance at alternative keyboards that way. So I'm going to check to see what some of the questions are. Are there tools for a student whose verbal thoughts are much faster than their writing or typing skills? That's why we're doing what we're doing today. So stick with us. Those are great ways of asking that kind of thing that I need, for somebody whose verbal skills are higher level than their writing skills is often why we enter the area of alternative writing. I go back. You'll also see other kinds of alternative pencils presented. If you do a Google search now on alternative pencils, you'll get things that were made from Teachers Pay Teachers. You'll get things that were made from other supports. Talking and operating my iPad don't seem to be in my skill set right now. Low-tech supports. I mentioned the idea of using label writers. For me, I have students that still have to do fill in the blanks. They still have to fill out worksheets. And I want their cognitive load to be on what they're filling out on the worksheet rather than what it is that how they form the letters. And so we'll often use abandon. eBay's great for this. As abandon writers, because it's already sticky on the back, you can put right on, put it right on the paper. Some other things to be thinking about as portable writing systems, are with cell phones and hooking up Bluetooth keyboards to those other types of things like tablets and phones. Some replacements maybe, or some supports that more in the low-tech area is because there are swap outs for enlarged keyboards. Some of the enlarged keyboards like those from Big Keys and from AbleNet have color coding that might be representative as the one in this image of where the function keys are. There are other systems that are color coded based upon vowels and consonants. Others that are color coded based upon the position, if you're going to be a one-handed typer or a two-handed typer. Other things that people will do are KEYGUARDS. You see in the lower left-hand corner an image of a KEYGUARD on top of a flat surface, in this case an iPad, that may give somebody some physical support so they're not activating everything all at the same time. Also from Therese Wilcom, the image in the lower right-hand corner, Therese has all kinds of ideas for alternative stylus and ways to access keyboards and other items that are on the screen. So those all become supports. High-tech wise, when we look at things that are more miniaturized, that are by specialty companies like AbleNet and Big Keys, Maltron keyboard, are things that we're looking at that might not just be commercially available off the shelf. They might have some other built-in support, such as sometimes the Big Keys keyboards can also be in alphabetical order. That might be a better processing strategy for some people. We are hearing guidance from some of the people that specialize in keyboarding and layouts. For example, Dr. Gretchen Hanser, many of you know Gretchen from her work when she was at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies and her research on getting kids to write letter by letter. And so some of the guidance that's coming from Gretchen and others is looking at if there's a potential for your student to be typing to a standard keyboard, to try to keep them in that QWERTY layout, that lovely layout. And then probably everybody is looking at somebody else near them that describes kind of the organization of the letters into QRETY. We're going to talk about alternatives to that for kids that are non-standard keyboard users, having a layout that's about efficiency, not just about what's out and about. But if I have kids that are moving around a school and can be at any Chromebook, although that's usually not what the situation is right now, but whatever that might be having, I want to teach them towards what is out there in the standard industry. So for example, we're going to get to the next category, and I'll show you some layouts for some other alternative keyboards that are on screen-based systems. Less used, but certainly viable options is if you have kids that are using low-tech or high-tech brailing systems, that's considered an alternative keyboard, right? It's an alternative layout. It is a quartic pattern in that not all, I've got more than one finger down at a time to produce a letter, a number, a punctuation, and you'll find those same strategies in keyboards such as the BAT, that's the keyboard on the left. InfroGrip is a company that has a variety of alternative keyboards that you can do some searches in. And then, as I mentioned before, if you've got a keyboard built into an AAC system, it's a nice go-to alternative for many kids. Some of the strategies that help us access keyboards such as on-screen keyboards, it may be that a student is using a keyboard on the screen that's either a separate software program, an app. It might be an alternative keyboard that's built into their device. It might be one that gets added to a tablet through the Play Store or through the Apple iTunes Store. And those kinds of keyboards, this goes back to your feature match process. Do I need them to scan? Do they need to present to the student row by row, group by group, item by item, so that student can use one or two switches to move through that array? Is it an alternative keyboard that you can use the technologies that many of us use on cell phones of swipe, that I can keep a finger down and move between the letters, and that produces the word or the words that are in the word prediction list? Is it something else that may be grouped? So I've got up on the screen the image from Crick Software of their within Clicker, within Big Keys. Here we go. So I'm going to stop my screen share again so that everything else gets bigger. It seems to be the easier way to do it right now. So keyboards such as grouped keyboards exist electronically as well. One of the purposes behind super keys, so that's the Crick product that's up now, is that if I might be a 2 or 3 finger selector, I can use that to choose the group. That group enlarges, and then I can have letters at a larger size for that. All right, and it will work the same way if I'm looking for my shortcuts, if I have shortcuts that are a part of my system. This is the same feature, this Super Keys feature, that's built into the majority of the Crick apps, like Clicker Connect and Clicker Sentences. So when I go to the alphabet or to when I go to my groupings, these things will enlarge that way. So that's, and this also works within word prediction. So if I have my word predictor screen come up, I can pull up uppercase or lowercase. I can go to my punctuation. I can go to my numbers. So all those things will work in an enlarged manner. Another example from alternative keyboard, and this is looking at things that exist themselves, but in this case, the system, what I'm showing you is the KEYDOGO keyboard. Oh, and we're moving around and moving around. Let's move KEYDOGO. This actually is within one of my students' Pro Loco to Go. You have a keyboard section that you can go to, so he can go to writing within his AAC product. And typically it was the normal, kind of the backup, the standard Apple keyboard. But we found some issues with this. Designation of keys versus letters versus numbers and functions. Some of the other things that were built in to it, like using the microphone and being able to switch between keyboards, was an issue for this particular student. So we looked around, and I'm going to show you a feature match chart that we did, because it wasn't just shopping based upon what other people were using. There was the process of feature match that we went through to see which keyboard could be integrated into his AAC system for when he wants to spell a word, as well as use that same thing for his typing and writing. And so in this case in KEYDOGO, and there are different layouts. Numbers, settings. So you'll see there are neutral layouts, different color layouts. Some of them bring with them different properties. So all the things that we're finding for him, for his particular needs, it was good to have the distinguish between vowels and consonants. That was another setting that we could do. To have the numbers separated and punctuation on another page that we could go back and forth to. So as I mentioned, we did a feature match to get to this process. So the idea of feature matching, as we've been talking, is that I can make a list of the kinds of features that a particular student needs. And so in this case, we were looking at an on-screen keyboard that had these types of features. We looked at, there were the standard thing that was built in. I always try and have that as something that we are comparing to other products that were out on the market, like the super keys that I showed you and some others suggested by other members of the team. In the feature match process, and using this kind of a feature match matrix, which is the second form in the SET framework, is to acknowledge all of the suggestions that people have. There may be some things on this list that weren't things that I would have suggested, but that's not up to me to be the gatekeeper of what goes on a feature match list. What I then look at is, here are the features that we've all talked about that this child needs. Does it have it? Does it not have it? You know, so I basically fill this out with yeses and nos. And if there are particular things that we need to do in order to make it work, you know, the Tim Gunn make it work moment. And there might be things that, hey, guess what? I don't know. You don't, being an assistive technology person doesn't mean you gotta know it all, but you do have to know what you don't know. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means it doesn't exist in your knowledge bank. It might exist in somebody else's knowledge bank. And that's why you have various lists that you can go and ask questions to. So when we were using this particular one, one of the things that we looked at was this second item here, as well as the standard keyboard. And we found that this same, that we looked first at Keyball, and then we found that the company that creates Keyball, which is assistive wear, had this product that had a little bit more flexibility to it. So even though we had targeted one, we were able to find through trialing that there was another one that was going to give us the options that we needed. So a very quick look at a feature match form. Let me go back to the presentation and get us to some other strategies. Desktop helper alert for a question that was asked a while ago. Desktop helpers are things that many teachers put on kids' desks. Thus, help desktop. That might show you how letters are formed. It might be particular words. If you do a Google search on desktop helpers, you are going to find all kinds of supports, and they might have number functions on them. So usually they have things that teachers are trying to get kids to memorize, or if they can't memorize them, they've got a quick support that's right there. So it isn't just how do I spell my name, which often is on a desktop helper for some of our early elementary kids, but also other kinds of things to do with counting, and you'll find them for all different kinds of age groups. Some other desktop helpers might be more specific. So they might be things like sentence starters. And I have teachers that have these sentence starters in a grid. You'll find Pay Teacher has a lot of these kinds of things, whether you're working on different text types. So if I'm working on persuasive writing, what are my sentence starters with that? If I'm working on argumentative writing, what is that? If I'm working on descriptions, if I'm working on personal narratives. So you'll often find these kinds of sentence starters there that kids can copy from, or you can add them into electronic systems. So if I have some word bank systems, or if I have systems that I can add in phrases into my word predictor, often the sentence starters are a nice part of that. You'll see, again, Crick software has some good examples of these things. Writing supports are also physical supports. So all of those specialty papers, the sky, the ground, the core of the earth, the yellow highlighted line, and then physical templates that go on top of paper, like some of the examples here. Many of these writing papers and writing guides can be found in catalogs that the occupational therapists use. They can be found in catalogs for individuals with vision impairment, because they can help people with printing that have low vision. Other groupings are things like word banks and word walls. In the upper right-hand corner, you see an image from the word bank program, so that from Don Johnston Company, so that words can be displayed in a linear fashion, or those words can be presented as a word cloud. And for some, depending upon the features that a student needs, you might find those kinds of things. We look at particular word banks for certain areas of writing. In the lower left-hand corner is an image out of Kurzweil and one of their specialty word banks that can be used alongside with the next category that we talk about, which is graphic organizers and then word prediction. So graphic organizers set that stage, usually organized by the type and style of writing. If you're gathering information, we look at things that might be in print and things that are electronic that can be reorganized, such as some of the brainstorming maps. Other kinds of writing supports are things like text-to-speech, so that I can listen as I write. And it's, things to add to this category, lessons learned and all of those, taking from research from some of the folks out of the University of Arizona and their teams with Catherine Harris and Stephen Graham, is looking that not every kid needs to have everything that they write speak back to them. They don't need to have every letter, every individualized word, every sentence, every paragraph. So part of matching up what they need is, might you have somebody like I do with this particular system where we're starting with having every letter named out loud, as he is a very much an emergent typer. And when he hits the space, it says the word. And when he hits a full stop, like period, question mark, exclamation point, it says the sentence. But we will be eventually dropping out those. Now, with this particular, with the iPad, I can do that with the built-in features of the iPad. It doesn't necessarily have to be a feature that's built into the keyboard. So some of these settings you're getting from the base technology, Chromebook, iPad, Windows-based, Galaxy tablet, whatever it is. And then some of it is then comes from the software or the app that you load on top of it. You will often see too is that some kids in the area of writing might use their CCTV system. Here, one of the examples here from Freedom Scientific at the top is one of the systems that while you're reading, as you turn the page, it triggers the page to be scanned in so that I can hear my materials, and I might be typing at the same time to respond in like a question answer scenario. So I have one student who has her CCTV and she prints underneath it so that it's enlarged. So those systems too are things that can be very helpful. You're being able to take in text, being able to speak and have things recorded. And those recordings then might be, in the case of voice recognition, be converted to text. Not everything that a child types needs to be converted from speech to text. There are apps such as the one here on the screen. In the lower part of the screen is the Go worksheet, where a worksheet or something that documentation that a student needs to be responding on can be answered with a recording. The materials on the screen can be made into recordable items so that a student can listen to what is on their test paper or quiz or whatever it might be that you bring up onto the Go worksheet. And then things can be turned into multiple choice. So if those kinds of accommodations are being made from rather than an open-ended question to a multiple choice question, those kinds of things can be converted right here within that particular product from Attainment Company, the Go worksheet. And then we can also have things like speech that's built into your Google Docs and other programs where we can have recordings. But if you are truly thinking about that voice recognition, and certainly there are more sessions out there about voice recognition and its use than we can cover here in a feature match time, you need to be thinking about the multitasking that individuals do when they're using voice recognition. It isn't as simple as I talk and it answers, because the complexity of written communication by voice is different than the complexity of expressive communication by voice. So just because you have a child that might be very articulate doesn't mean that voice recognition is always the only part of their solution. They may need things like graphic organizers, sentence starters that help them compose what it is that they're going to be saying with voice that's then captured by the technology and converted to text. And the whole process of what I say gets put, I need to, into my platform. I need to be able to read that. So whether I'm visual processing reading that or auditorily reading it, then I need to be able to check it and edit it. So as I mentioned earlier on, not all kids' solutions is one thing. You might be using a variety of tools together. We have a feature match that's going to be more specific on word prediction, but the presentation of word prediction, whether it is truly predicting based upon, I'm at the beginning of the sentence. I just typed in a personal pronoun and the verbs that are being predicted go along with that personal pronoun. Do I have phrases that are predicted together? Versus word completion, which is just as you type, it's trying to complete based upon the letters that you have. That it's not connecting things phonemically, it's not connecting things based upon grammar and other ways that some prediction systems. So all word prediction is not built the same. You need to know what part of word prediction your particular student needs to be looking for. I mentioned earlier on the note-taking apps, so things where we can be recording. Talk about the issues of recording in the classroom. I think a lot of those barriers, if they weren't broken down prior to our time in asynchronous school or in virtual school, where many things are getting recording with or without the knowledge of the people who are doing the presenting. So we have some openings here that we may not have had in the past, where educators were very closed to being recorded, and who owned that personal information and who else was being recording and all of those things. To be working through when I have students that for note-taking purposes, they might not have the recording on for the entire class period, but they may have it on when the teacher gives the assignment. So here's the assignment. So instead of having to do printed or keyboarded notes when I'm getting the information on the assignment, I use my recording for that feature. And then you'll find other tools like Audio Note Taker or Glean, where that audio file can get converted to text so the student can manipulate it and rework it for some of the products that they might need to produce or for studying. So, we're down here to the last, 5 minutes or so, thinking about feature match for the area of writing. I gave you the example from my student with the alternative keyboard, where we put at the top of this feature match form. This is a feature match form right off of joyzabala.com's website. And I've converted it and use it in Excel. I use it in Google Sheets. It's just a grid. Nothing special about it. Other than how things get put into it, where their needs are put at the top, products are put down the first column, and then you go about, does it have this, does it not? I also use this during the assessment process, where which products that we're trialing go back onto this grid with the items across the top that are a part of the features that we were looking at. And after a trial's been completed, I have the student and those around them rate that product based upon the features that were predetermined. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how was the word prediction in this product? On a scale of 1 to 5, how was the keyboard layout? On a scale of 1 to 5, how was the voice feedback to it? And we end up during that feedback process breaking things down. For example, the student that you just saw, one of the reasons that we're at this particular font is because of what the letter A and the letter U look like, because those are the ways that he's learning to write the letter A, not a letter A with the little serif hat on top of it. So, these kinds of things get more particular as you go through the process. To find out more information on features, hold on, I'm going to do a check-in here with a question. Do you have to be using an iPad to use these apps, or can you use with laptops, tablets? That is a part of your features. As you're looking at, the products that I've been showing you today are iPad-based products, but there are on-screen keyboards and adapted keyboards available in the world of Chrome and for Windows and for Mac. Some of these that I've had in the list today crossover. Some are particular to the platform. So hopefully that answers that. So that's something that you have to look for. I would need an on-screen keyboard for Chromebook as you do your searches. Here are some places where you can do those searches. So you've got the Tech Matrix site. That's mostly about things in the area of reading and writing. Closing the gap. Now, closing the gap to search products that needs to be a part of your solutions membership. They do have, when you go to the Closing the Gap website, a free portion called the front page report, and that will show you new products, and I tend to try and hit that page up every month or so I can see what's new coming out. Another what they call the unified listing. This is out of a project from the Trace Center at the University of Maryland, where they've pulled together the databases, including ABLE data and some other ones that are international, is the unified listing. And you can, one of the things I like about the searching on the unified list is I can go to this section on finding similar products. So for example, the question that was just asked about, does all this particular, say this particular Keyboard product, does it work on other platforms? I could go into unified listing, which is free, comes out of a research grant. And they're still working on this database too. They're taking feedback from people as you do searches, and if you run into things that you can't find, excuse me, or other information. So in find similar products, I could type in the term Keyboard and it would find products that are similar to this. And then I can go through and justify, indicate in the check boxes that I'm looking for something that's just Windows or something that is just Chrome. One of my go-to resources too is for informing people about features is at Call Scotland. And we've given you some of the examples here for apps that for individuals who are dyslexic or have reading and writing difficulties. When you go to, this is a free resource site, the features will be around the middle, and then out on the spokes of the wheel will be suggested products. It won't be complete because you can't only fit so many things into this visually, but it'll give you a good place to start. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tammy as we're getting very close to the top of the hour and see what other questions that we have.
All right, does anybody have any extra questions? Just want to give you a minute before I enter the codes into the chat box. All right. So as you can see on the screen, here are the session codes and the links to the survey and ASHA bubble sheet, which I also entered into the window. The session verification survey will be available after 4:15 today, where you will enter the codes for Act 48 or certificates of attendance. For those of you seeking ASHA credit, you'll need to download the bubble sheet, complete it, then upload it to the survey. And the survey has to be completed before Wednesday, September 16th at 4 p.m. And on behalf of Pat and Kelly, I really wanted to thank you for sharing such valuable information about AT writing tools with all of our attendees. And thank you all for joining us today. It looks like we might have information in our chat window. Hold on. Let me see, where are you?
There's a question there about how long do I allow for a meeting where you will discuss feature matching. For me, feature matching input isn't a sit-down meeting. You know, we have to be more flexible in times now where people don't have a lot of time to sit and chat about these things. So I'm often gathering information. Sometimes I'm gathering that information before I meet a student. It may be that, so I'm putting that list together based upon information that I get from reports, present levels of performance supports. So often I'll gather that information and then send that out and get feedback off of that feature match form. Like here are the features that it seems like is important to this student, and then have people add to that. it can happen as a part of a meeting, but I don't call special meetings to talk about features. And that's just me and my practice because I'm often not in the same location as people that I'm working with. And it looks like the rest of the questions are things for Tammy to deal with.
Sorry, everyone. I was trying to get my chat window back and couldn't find it. The code is X as in xylophone, 9, R as in Roger, 2, W as in water, T as in tango. X, 9, R, 2, W, T. I will share my window again. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, I can't do that. Hold on. It also is in the chat window. So let's do that one more time. And let's see. It is not working for me, guys. Try that.
So there was a, while Tammy's doing that, there was a question about the specialized feature match document. Yeah, I just use a spreadsheet. It's based off of Joy Zabala's layout. For those of you that are going to be with us in the AT Tech training, we're going to be looking at the different feature match documents. And if you're referring to the features on that note-taking one, if I haven't sent that to Tammy, I will send that out to her as well. But the form itself, nothing special. Spreadsheet.
All right, I can't quite get it to do what it's supposed to. But there's the code again. It was up in our chat window. Here is one more time in the chat window. And then with that, if there are no more questions, we have the link to the survey is in the window. If you did not receive a confirmation email last week, check your spam folder. But otherwise, I can, if you send me an email and you're really concerned about it and have already checked your spam folder, I can have my support staff check to make sure that the survey has been completed and that you're good to go, all right? You can email me at tcook@patentkop.net, or you can also email, on the screen you can see assistive-tech-connect@kop.net. Let's see. And then, yes, thank you for pointing out there, frustratingly, the ASHA form is not fillable. So you will have to download it, fill it out by hand, scan it, or take a picture of it and upload it to the survey. So I apologize in advance. This was not something that I did. But this was something that was provided to me. So I apologize for you guys having to write by hand, but that's just how we're gonna have to do it. And Valerie said she used PDF Annotator to fill it in. I've used the fill and sign, but hopefully you AT people can work your magic and get it to work for you. Otherwise, you can do it the old-fashioned way. All right. And then the handouts are on the website, and they're two to a page, so those are available to you. The handouts, I provided the link. It's, let's see, I'll put the handout link in the window again. It also has the forms that someone was asking for earlier. Oops, I think I just put the wrong thing in again. Sorry about that. Handout, copying it from the window because it's faster. Let's try this one more time. Here they are. There are the handouts. Okay, with that, let me just check. I think that's it.
So, Tammy, just one more. I don't know if Shelley is still online with us, but Shelley had asked the question earlier on about if the students' verbal thoughts are much faster than their writing or typing skills and they have a speech problem. That's when we look at integrating some of the recording pieces and then combining word walls, word prediction to assist it. So if that person's going to be with us in the next session, we'll talk more about that.
All right, with that, I guess we're done. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Kelly.
You got it. Tammy, do I stay online or do I need to hit the next link?
You'll have to hit the next link. It's a 20.
All right.
Yep.
See you in a sec.
Yeah.